For over a century, the fate of the Neanderthals has been shrouded in speculation, from climate disasters to violence or plague. But the truth is written directly in their DNA. The genomes reveal extreme inbreeding, genetic collapse, and a one-way drain into our own lineage. The answer is not a single event, but a chain reaction that made Neanderthal extinction inevitable from the moment Homo sapiens arrived. The genetic verdict changes everything we thought we knew. Ancient DNA proves Neanderthals were absorbed, outbred, infected, and diminished until the last few individuals simply stopped being born. K. Prüfer's analysis of the Altai Neanderthal genome exposed a genetic reality that numbers alone make hard to ignore. In the DNA, scientists found long, uninterrupted stretches where every gene was identical, called runs of homozygosity. These are the unmistakable signature of parents who were close relatives, sometimes as close as half-siblings or first cousins. That is not a quirk of one cave or one unlucky family. Across the Neanderthal range, from the Altai Mountains to Western Europe, genome after genome shows the same pattern: low heterozygosity, meaning less genetic variety than any living human population. In fact, Neanderthal genetic diversity was about a third of what is seen in present-day Europeans. Population reconstructions using these genomes reveal that Neanderthals rarely numbered more than 10,000 breeding adults at any one time. Some periods saw even fewer. In practical terms, that is the population of a small town, spread thinly across thousands of miles. Small numbers like these make inbreeding mathematically unavoidable. Over generations, the effects compound. There are more harmful mutations, lower fertility, weakened immune systems, and an increased risk of genetic disorders. The Altai genome alone revealed inbreeding levels that would be considered severe even in the most isolated modern communities. This genetic fragility was not a late development or a local accident. It was a baseline condition for Neanderthals as a species. Their DNA shows a population already in demographic crisis long before the arrival of Homo sapiens would add new pressures. The numbers written in their chromosomes made survival a constant uphill battle. Geneticists expected to find echoes of Neanderthal lineages scattered throughout living humans. Instead, the deeper they searched, the more glaring the absences became. Every non-African person today carries about 2% Neanderthal DNA, but not a single one has inherited a Neanderthal mitochondrial genome or Y chromosome. Both lines, the direct maternal and paternal threads, are missing, completely erased from the human family tree. The only Neanderthal DNA that survives is found in the autosomes, the chromosomes inherited from both parents, not in those that pass unbroken from mother to child or father to son. This is not a fluke of sampling. Global genetic surveys have combed through tens of thousands of modern genomes. The result is always the same: no Neanderthal mitochondrial DNA, no Neanderthal Y chromosome. The only way this happens is if interbreeding was deeply asymmetric. The pairings that left descendants were not balanced exchanges between two equal populations. Instead, the genetic evidence points to a pattern where Neanderthal lineages were funneled into the much larger Homo sapiens population, but only certain crosses produced children who could themselves have children. Hybrid males often ended up sterile, a dead end for Neanderthal paternal lines, while Neanderthal maternal lines were outnumbered and replaced by the expanding human gene pool. Every time a Neanderthal joined a Homo sapiens group, their unique lineage was diluted, their unbroken line snapped. Over generations, this one-way gene flow siphoned individuals out of Neanderthal groups and erased their distinct identity from the inside out. The result is a genetic record not of mutual blending but of absorption, an irreversible drain that turned Neanderthals from a people into a fading echo within our own DNA. David Reich's team at Harvard turned to population genetic modeling to answer one of the most uncomfortable questions in human evolution. What happens when a small, shrinking lineage comes into contact with a much larger, expanding one? The answer, according to the numbers, is as stark as it is impersonal. Start with a few thousand Neanderthals, never more than the population of a small town, scattered across Europe and Western Asia. Set them against Homo sapiens groups whose numbers were already climbing into the tens of thousands and growing faster with every generation. Plug those values into computer simulations, run the equations forward in time, and the outcome is not in doubt. With each generation of contact, a handful of Neanderthals leave their dwindling bands and have children with Homo sapiens. Their descendants, now part of the larger human population, carry a little Neanderthal DNA. But as these children and grandchildren continue to marry into the much bigger Homo sapiens gene pool, their Neanderthal ancestry becomes more and more diluted, halved, quartered, then scattered into fragments so small they are barely detectable after thousands of years. The mathematics of absorption does not require violence or catastrophe. It only takes a persistent imbalance in numbers. As long as Neanderthals remained a small minority, their distinct genetic identity was doomed to fade. Even if no one ever raised a hand in anger, the act of joining a larger group gradually erased them as a separate people. Reich's models show that, under plausible contact rates, the original Neanderthal lineage would be reduced to a faint signal, just a couple % of the DNA in any living non-African. Within a few thousand years, the process is relentless. Each Neanderthal who leaves for a larger group is one less in the shrinking pool, and the odds of survival as a distinct population drop with every birth. The numbers alone make extinction inevitable, even before natural selection starts filtering which Neanderthal genes can persist in the new human genome. Ancient DNA doesn't just reveal where Neanderthal ancestry survives in us, it also shows exactly where it has been erased. The most telling example lies on the X chromosome. Across the genomes of modern non-Africans, Neanderthal DNA appears in small, scattered fragments, but the X chromosome is a near desert. In some regions, Neanderthal ancestry on the X is less than half the level found on the other chromosomes. This is not random loss. The X chromosome plays a central role in male fertility, and when Neanderthal versions of key genes ended up in hybrid males, those combinations often failed. Genes involved in testes function and sperm production are especially depleted of Neanderthal ancestry. Over thousands of years, natural selection filtered out these incompatible fragments, leaving only the Neanderthal DNA that did not cause problems in a Homo sapiens body. The same DNA evidence exposes another layer of vulnerability. When modern humans left Africa, they carried immune gene variants that Neanderthals had never encountered. Some Neanderthal alleles, especially in genes like TLR1, TLR6, and TLR10, actually gave early Homo sapiens an advantage in fighting Eurasian infections. These variants persist in many people today, but Neanderthals lacked the immune diversity carried by incoming Homo sapiens. Their small, isolated groups had less genetic variety to draw on, making them more susceptible to new diseases. The genetic record shows that as Neanderthal DNA was being filtered out of the human genome, Homo sapiens were also picking up a handful of useful Neanderthal immune genes, while Neanderthals were left dangerously exposed to unfamiliar pathogens. Between 50,000 and 40,000 years ago, the climate of Eurasia swung wildly from warm to bitter cold and back again, sometimes within a single human lifetime. Greenland ice cores and European cave records capture these abrupt shifts, the Dansgaard-Oeschger events and Heinrich pulses, each one redrawing the map of forests, grasslands, and ice. When researchers align the genetic data with these climate records, a pattern emerges. Every major dip in Neanderthal genetic diversity lines up with these episodes of environmental chaos. Genome-based reconstructions show that Neanderthal populations did not just shrink. They splintered into isolated pockets, each group more genetically fragile than the last. Clive Finlayson's work on southern refuges highlights how these climate swings forced Neanderthals into scattered strongholds, where small group size and isolation made recovery nearly impossible. The DNA record and the climate proxies together reveal a species repeatedly squeezed by the environment, each oscillation pushing Neanderthals further toward demographic collapse. At El Cidrón in northern Spain, the DNA of a small Neanderthal group reveals a family bound not just by blood, but by the limits of their world. The genomes show runs of homozygosity, even longer than those seen in earlier Neanderthals, evidence of parents who were themselves close kin, and a community so small that inbreeding was unavoidable. These were not isolated cases. Across the last Neanderthals sampled in Europe, genetic diversity had collapsed. Groups fell below the minimum size needed to sustain healthy births. Antonio Rosas and his team found a pattern. The final Neanderthals were living as remnants, not as a thriving people. Each child born into a shrinking circle, each generation carrying heavier genetic burdens until the line simply faded away. Today, every human genome carries silent traces of this extinction. It is proof that survival isn't always conquest, but absorption. Ancient DNA makes one fact clear: vulnerability compounds across generations. As we face our own environmental and genetic challenges, the Neanderthal fate warns us. Dominance offers no immunity from decline. Thanks for watching.